Penguin Random House Audio presents Get Out of Your Own Way, Overcoming Self-Defeating Behavior by Mark Goulston, M.D. and Philip Goldberg. This is the author, Mark Goulston, M.D. 10 Things You Can Learn from Self-Defeating Behavior. Since this book was first published, I have been extremely gratified by the response I've received from readers. I've also learned a great deal from those readers, and from the reaction to my top 10 lists of things we can learn from the self-defeating behavior of public figures, from John Edwards to Bill Cosby to Bill O'Reilly to President Trump's infamous Access Hollywood video, which I've written for various publications. Thanks to the insightful readers who have applied the advice in this book to their lives, I've come to realize that there are universal lessons to be learned from understanding the nature of self-defeating behavior. Therefore, to help you get even more out of this book, here are the top 10 lessons I've learned from readers. 1. Work on it now. One of the greatest tragedies you can experience is to come to the end of your life and realize that it has not been everything you'd hoped it would be. Even more tragic is to realize that your failure to fulfill your hopes and dreams was due in large part to your own inability to get out of your own way. It's never too late. The time to overcome your self-defeating behaviors is now. Otherwise, you run the risk of suffering deep regret over opportunities missed, satisfaction lost, and love not given or received. 2. Jump from the frying pan onto the counter, not into the fire. In your haste to change a self-defeating behavior, make sure you don't just substitute a different self-defeating behavior. The new one might even be more damaging than the original. Remember, if you shoot from your hip, you can end up shooting yourself in the foot. Acting rashly in an effort to find a new coping mechanism can provide momentary relief only to complicate your life, damage your credibility, and end up making you hate yourself for acting foolishly. Instead of waiting until a similar situation arises and acting impulsively, figure out in advance what course of action would provide a lasting solution, not just a temporary substitution. 3. Avoidance is no solution. In an attempt to change a self-defeating pattern within a relationship, some people decide to avoid trouble by keeping their failings to themselves. Staying angry and living with the pain seems to be a better choice than having another argument. The problem is, if you do not deal with hurt and disappointment quickly enough, those feelings harden into resentment, anger, and hate. They fester inside and eventually turn into physical symptoms and/or emotional powder kegs. In the long run, it's much less self-defeating to acknowledge the problem early on and deal with it effectively, with compassion, respect, and empathy. 4. There is nothing more futile than trying to change another person. In an attempt to take the easy way out, some people try to change others rather than work on their own self-defeating behavior. Hey, I wouldn't lose my temper if she stopped criticizing me. I wouldn't have to criticize him if he wasn't such a slob. When it's so difficult to change yourself, how on earth do you imagine that it will be a simple task to change someone else? You are better off concentrating on overcoming your self-defeating behaviors and changing yourself for the better. As for the other person, they're much more likely to come around if you use understanding and acceptance rather than coercion and guilt. 5. You can't fix something until you admit it's broken. A fine line separates being direct from being blunt, being assertive from being abrasive, being strong-minded from being stubborn, being sensitive from being histrionic, or being spontaneous from being impulsive. Knowing the difference means recognizing the truth about your behavior, which is the first step to positive change. 6. It takes seconds to destroy trust and years to rebuild it. The longer you persist in self-defeating behavior, the more likely you are to lose the respect and trust of others. Even if no one is immediately hurt or offended by your actions, they will still become wary of what might happen next, and it can take a long time to earn back their respect and trust. So get on with it before the road back to respectability becomes too long to travel and all the sympathy you're used to getting turns to pity. The longer you avoid changing, the more your friends will avoid you. 7. Where there's a way, there's a will. Studies show that people stay in unsatisfying jobs and relationships because they can't find a way to change that feels right, makes sense, and is doable. Simply having the will is not enough. You also need a way. And in fact, sometimes the way precedes the will. Visualize a practical alternative to your self-defeating behavior. Then, when you find yourself starting down the rocky road to self-defeat, pause, reflect, and replace the destructive behavior with a more constructive way of dealing with the situation. 8. You can teach an old dog new tricks. Often the main obstacle to change is a lack of confidence that you can actually learn and implement new approaches to old problems. To avoid making the commitment to grow, we sometimes look for flaws in every new idea and find a reason to reject them. That's why, for instance, some people use the fact that computers sometimes crash as an excuse for keeping cumbersome paper files. They're actually afraid they won't be able to work the computer. 9. Self-involvement is usually at the root of self-defeating behavior in relationships. It's great to work on your self-defeating behavior, but don't get so obsessed that you lose sight of those who matter to you. The more preoccupied you are with yourself, the less likely you are to consider, acknowledge, or even notice other people. As a result, they feel hurt, frustrated, and angry, convinced that you don't really care about them. That's no way to keep a friend or lover. You can begin to repair such rifts only through empathy. Get in the habit of putting yourself in the other person's shoes by asking yourself, what is it like for him or her right now? 10. Few things make you feel worse than giving in to self-defeating behavior. But few things make you feel better than overcoming it. Like eating sweets or having an affair, the high you feel after indulging in self-defeating behavior is short-lived, and the shame, guilt, and self-contempt you feel in their wake is not only chilling, but long-lasting. But if you nip self-defeating behavior in the bud, resist the temptation to give in to it, and replace it with a positive self-developing behavior, you will discover more self-esteem and self-respect than you have ever experienced in your life. Introduction: How to Beat Self-Defeat. In 1972, after 2 grueling years in medical school, I was on the brink of dropping out. My classwork felt oppressive and I could not decide on a specialty because none of them appealed to me. What I liked was spending time with patients. I was moved by their suffering and found that I had a natural inclination for calming them and easing their concerns. But in an age of high-tech medicine, spending time talking to patients and alleviating their anxieties was considered lightweight. It was mere hand-holding. Doctors did hard work, heroic work, battling with death. I became so concerned about this dilemma, in fact, that I developed chronic stomach problems. My mentor, the dean of students, arranged for me to participate in a program at the Menninger Foundation for Psychiatric Education and Research in Topeka, Kansas. I viewed it as a chance to be in a less pressured environment and sort out what I wanted to do. I got much more than I bargained for. After several weeks in the psychiatric wards, talking and listening to numerous patients, I thought for the first time of specializing in psychiatry. The work came easily and naturally to me, but for that very reason I resisted it. In my mind, work was not supposed to be something you enjoyed, but something you endured. If it wasn't hard, it wasn't legitimate. I told all this to the dean. He thought the answer was simple: become a psychiatrist. But that would be the easy way out, I protested. His reply changed my life. Sometimes the easy way out is the right way in. The experience not only influenced my choice of careers, but the way I subsequently practiced it.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?